It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming for Wednesday, February 19th. I'm Wendy Corr, bringing you headlines from the Cowboy State Daily newsroom, brought to you by the Wyoming Senior Olympics. Experience the excitement of the Winter Games February 20th through the 22nd in Pinedale and support the SAFE initiative. For event details and the full schedule, visit WyomingSeniorOlympics.com. Authorities Tuesday released the names of the 3 men who died Friday in a devastating Green River tunnel collision involving 26 vehicles. They were 20-year-old Christopher Johnson of Rawlins, 22-year-old Quentin Romero of Rawlins, and 30-year-old Harmanjeet Singh of Nova Scotia. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that Romero was also a member of the Wyoming National Guard.
On the same day, the Wyoming Highway Patrol and the coroner released their identities. The Wyoming National Guard put out a memorial and announced the service for him. The 2 Rawlins men, their obituaries were out. I could not find an obituary for Singh as of publication time, but he was from Canada.
Memorial Hospital of Sweetwater County treated 18 injuries from the crash, and 1 woman remained hospitalized as of Monday evening. Wyoming Highway Patrol is working with crash reconstructions and off-scene investigations. Colonel Tim Cameron thanked the public for its patience while the agency compiles a crash narrative and a cause that is as accurate as possible. The push to eliminate Wyoming's gun-free zones gained momentum Tuesday when a bill that would allow concealed carry in schools, the state capitol building, and elsewhere unanimously passed the Senate Judiciary Committee and is headed to the Senate floor. Cowboy State Daily's Mark Hines reports that Tuesday's testimony regarding House Bill 172 included input from nationally known gun rights author John Lott, whose work has been quoted and, according to him, misquoted by state lawmakers and members of the public for years in the divisive debate over concealed carry.
We're hearing a lot of impassioned testimony, both for it and against it. One notable thing that happened today is, if anybody's ever heard of the book More Guns, Less Crime, it's fairly well known. It's written by John Lott. He actually appeared via Zoom before the Senate Judiciary Committee and was saying, I'm here to defend my reputation because a lot of people have been slamming me during the testimony. But like everybody else, he was given 2 minutes, a hard 2 minutes. I mean, they cut the guy off mid-sentence. The bill did advance. It's gone from a Senate committee. It passed the House. Then it came into a Senate committee, passed the Senate committee, so it's moved to the Senate floor. So that's one more step toward it hitting Governor Gordon's desk.
The committee agreed to an amendment to HB 172, stating that 18-year-old students still enrolled in public schools would not be allowed to carry concealed firearms into their schools. Illegal immigration fears have run high during the 2025 Wyoming legislature, and on Tuesday that continued when the Senate Transportation, Highways, and Military Affairs Committee advanced a bill that would ban illegal immigrants from driving in Wyoming. If passed into law, House Bill 116 would specify that driver's licenses issued by other states to illegal immigrants are invalid in Wyoming. That's according to politics reporter Leo Wolfson.
This is kind of an interesting piece of legislation because these people are already not allowed to get licenses in the state of Wyoming. But what this bill does is it makes it so that Wyoming does not recognize the licenses issued by other states that are given to these individuals in those 19 other states. So it basically bans illegal immigrants from driving in Wyoming under any circumstance. It's part of kind of a larger overarching effort that the Wyoming legislature has made to address illegal immigration, which was a cornerstone of President Donald Trump's 2024 presidential campaign.
The committee advanced the bill on a 4-1 vote, with only Republican State Senator Ed Cooper of Tensleep voting against it. The father of 2 little girls and stepfather of another 2 who lost his entire family in a tragic murder-suicide in Byron is just living from one breath to the next. That's what Cliff Harshman told Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland in an exclusive interview last week. His wife, Tranielle, had been struggling with depression and other emotional issues, but he said he had no idea her pain had become so severe that she would choose to end her life and the lives of all 4 of her daughters.
He asked God to help him forgive her the day that she died and told her goodbye. And even though it was so tragic, he did notice kind of a glimmer and a symmetry in her organs going to save 5 people when she had shot 5 people, including herself. When it really hit him Friday at coffee, he wept, and it really hit then that there is a symmetry in that, however tragic. He agreed to meet with me at a coffee shop in Powell, and he had just come from the house that morning. So he'd gone to the house the the things that had been bloodied were taken out, which he said that was kind of law enforcement and the cleaning crews to remove those things. But at the same time, there was very little left that smelled like them. There was clean laundry, but he had to find some once or twice worn jammies and sweaters so that he could experience that scent one last time.
Harshman said he hopes that by telling Tranielle's story, it will shine a light on the seriousness of postpartum depression and inspire people to look after one another and show kindness to people who are struggling. And now let's take a look at today's weather with Cowboy State Daily meteorologist Don Day.
It's another day, and we're talking about the same thing. Arctic cold across the north, central, and eastern parts of the state, Pacific air in the west, and parts of the southwest areas. Basically, it's the same setup. We're going to have Arctic air in place for another day and another night in those areas I just mentioned. There'll be some lingering snow in the southeast part of the state early in the day today. Snow showers will be redeveloping in the west, and then snow showers will develop west to east across the state as we get into late tonight and Thursday. But this flow of air that's coming in from the west is going to be strong enough to start to push out the Arctic air. Now, it's not going to happen right away, but after another cold day, another very cold night, temperatures will start to ease a little Thursday. Not a lot. Thursday and Thursday night will still be pretty chilly in those northern and eastern areas, but by Friday and the weekend, westerly Pacific flow will push the Arctic air to the east. Temperatures will moderate statewide, and we'll get a break from the cold, especially for you folks in the northern and northeastern counties of the state who have been suffering through severe cold for quite some time.
You can get Don's full forecast on the Cowboy State Daily website. I'll be back in just 15 seconds with more news.
They want to know if we received a relay call before?
Yes, go ahead.
We need to have a party catered.
When you receive a relay call, someone who is deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind, or has a speech disability is calling you. It could be the most important call of the day.
Louis DeJoy announced Monday that he plans to step down as Postmaster General and that it's time for the USPS Board of Governors to seek his successor. The announcement follows months of controversy over the U.S. Postal Service's rollout of Delivering for America, which would speed mail service in more populous areas of the country at the expense of rural mail delivery, which would become much slower. Cowboy State Daily's Renee Jean reports that the development was met as good news from Wyoming public officials who've criticized the idea of moving all of Wyoming's major mail processing capabilities to other states.
Representative Harriet Hagman said it's not time to relax, that just because DeJoy is resigning doesn't mean Delivering for America is dead. Wyoming could still lose all of its large mail processing capabilities. She has introduced some legislation to try to maintain at least one regional processing and distribution center in the Cowboy State, as well as better, more transparency on announcements about major plans.
DeJoy was defiant in the letter that he sent Monday to the Postal Service Board of Governors. He appears to still be giving himself an A grade as head of the U.S. Postal Service, saying that he'd worked tirelessly to lead the Postal Service's 640,000 men and women in accomplishing, quote, an extraordinary transformation. Well, during discussion in the Wyoming House on the proposed repeal of the state's budget reserve account Tuesday, Republican State Representative Landon Brown of Cheyenne decided he'd finally had it with some of his fellow House members. After being on the losing end of more than a few bills and amendments this session, Brown vented his frustration that members are not debating bills enough. Cowboy State Daily's Leo Wolfson reports that Brown feels some are taking, quote, marching orders on how to vote from Wyoming Freedom Caucus leadership.
He doesn't believe there's enough explaining of what's going on with these bills. He was particularly frustrated that he didn't feel like he was getting an answer on why he should support the bill that was banning the budget reserve account. Brown wasn't really getting specific answers, or so he felt, and he just kind of chastised his fellow members. He even said he had to leave the chamber after kind of issuing his first reprimand, and he was so mad that he considered sticking his face in the snow. I don't think he actually did that. But then he came back and he seemed slightly more measured, but he kind of continued his same complaints.
Many of the votes in the House this session have been extremely predictable, with members of the Freedom Caucus and those who share their ideology voting in a consistent lockstep. Brown is not a member of this contingency. And a Wyoming Highway Patrol trooper faced his worst nightmare last week, responding to a crash involving his own family. Trooper Parker Smith lived that nightmare on the morning of February 12th when responding to a vehicle crash in Goshen County involving the severe injury of a small child. The child, 2-year-old Christian, was Smith's own son. Cowboy State Daily's Greg Johnson reports that Abby Smith was driving the family minivan when it was broadsided by a Goshen County snowplow while heading eastbound on Highway 85 through Torrington.
In Wyoming, where it's pretty rural and everybody knows everybody, that happens. And in this case, the trooper rolled up to the scene and found out pretty quickly that it was his wife and 2 young kids in their minivan. Officer Frank Gore, who lives in Gillette, told Zach Sontag, it's what everybody dreads. Everybody's just pulling for this kid to pull through.
Christian was flown to Scottsbluff, Nebraska, and then on to Children's Hospital of Colorado, where he's being treated for a collapsed lung, fractured ribs, jaw, and skull, among other injuries. He's on a ventilator. Smith's wife and other child were not seriously hurt. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by hitting the daily newsletter button on cowboystatedaily.com. And you can watch this newscast every day by clicking subscribe on our YouTube channel. Did you know we're also a podcast? Search for us on iTunes, Spotify, and all other major platforms. And remember to drop in on the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake Nichols, Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Wendy Corr for Cowboy State Daily.